Some of them haven't been performing that well. For example, Kitkatz, he just barely didn't qualify for the European Championships. And on the other hand, Nimsh actually went 0-3 in the European qualifiers for BlizzCon.
Yeah, well, I think anybody can have an off tournament. So even though you might see Nimsh not performing particularly well in the qualifiers, it could just be an off day for him or an off couple days. Versus someone like Reynad, we also know is streaky too, right? He sometimes has good runs, whether it's DreamHack or his BlizzCon qualifier, or just the few other tournaments sprinkled in between where it just couldn't seem like you win more than one series at a time. So. And that's just kind of harsh, though. You know, a lot of players, they haven't really been able to put down a big amount of consistent results. And that's why it's so impressive to see players like RDU constantly get to the finals and even win a lot of these tournaments. And I think today will be a really cool proving ground for some of these players, too, because more than just Reynad and Nimsh, and even Strifecro to a certain extent, Kitkatz is like one of these players that people have been looking at for a while to start backing up his name with results. And the reality is, one, he hasn't had many platforms to do it, and the second is, even when he has, it hasn't been that great yet. It's been kind of mediocre to say the least. But you know, I'm trying to be unbiased here, Monk, because you said I'm from Temple Storm, so I hope my honesty doesn't come off as off-putting here.
No, I think it's a very fair assessment of Kitkatz, actually. And from what we see, we've actually started the game, and it seems like both players have fiery war axes equipped. Kitkatz has the actual fire war axe, whereas Reynad has the dagger plus a poison. So both 3-1 weapons right now, and it's kind of looking like pretty slow starts at this point. Both players have the board cleared just because their weapons are so great, and Kitkatz is actually he's going slightly on the offensive with an attack to the face. How do you think the game's going so far? Reynad already has an auctioneer in his hand, actually.
Yeah, I mean, when you're going up against the warrior, the auctioneer is pretty much the card you're looking for just to keep the that going. And I'm kind of surprised that Kit Kat's let off with warrior, because you don't really. I don't know. It's interesting, just because I guess it makes sense. Granted, that Kit Kat thinks warrior can beat anything, but I know a lot of players sometimes don't feel that confident leading off with warrior, because they don't want to get put into another bad matchup like Druid, which is really common to start, or Shaman. But I'm not sure if these guys were able to list each other's classes beforehand.
The format actually, I think, is even though both players bring 3 decks, it's actually going to be a best of 3. So out of the 3 decks that you bring, you only get to play two. You only get to play 2 of those
That's right.
decks.
That's right.
So I think in this format, it makes sense to play Warrior because Kit Kat is so confident with Warrior that because he thinks he can beat anything, he'll just lead it off against whatever Reynad can bring. And then if he happens to lose this first game, or if he happens to even win, and then he loses the next game, he has a counter pick. So he's using this warrior to start off to kind of get him a lead, or perhaps and he always wants to play warrior. He doesn't want to be put in a position where he has to pick a deck which is not warrior because this is the deck he is most comfortable with after all.
All right. Well, Reynad has been playing Miracle for a while, and he's brought it to several tournaments. Even his BlizzCon qualifier, he showed that he was also playing a little bit of Miracle too, sprinkled in between some of his other stuff like Handlock. Now it seems like KitKats is going to use this Death Rattle effect to try and pop the Auctioneer, which is kind of a cool thing, but at the same time, there has been a lot of cards that can be drawn again because Reynad has picked up his second Auctioneer, and sometimes the Warrior's just powerless to do anything, especially if the Conceal goes down and you have no way to remove it without Brawl. And even then, that's just a 50-50 sometimes.
Yeah, I was actually talking to another Tempo Storm member by the name of Hyped, and he was saying that actually Warrior can be kind of a Miracle Row counter, but he had an asterisk at the top of that where he said you kind of need to time your Lothab very well. And unfortunately, Kitkatz is not drawn as Lothab, and he doesn't have many cards that can take initiative of the board. He has a few weapons, and he has a Sylvanas, but nothing that can really deal with the Auctioneer that well on Kitkatz's next turn.
Well, there's a lot of chain drawing preparation to Fan of Knives allows him to pick up 2. Oh my goodness, another preparation. And he also had coin, by the way, the previous turn, so there are a lot of free cards and cycling. And this is one of the things that people were saying, yeah, sure, Leroy might get nerfed. Cool. but there's still a lot of possibilities for draw potential. And the reality is you can win without Leroy a lot of the time, especially if you tool your deck to be that way. So this could be foreshadowing of just pretty much what you come to expect, where nothing really changes much. Reynad even picks up Conceal.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be played right this turn, and we definitely see it right now. And a good point that you mentioned, actually, there are decks right now, Miracle Rogue decks, that do not actually run the Leroy or the Shadow Step combo. Forsen actually streamed it a bunch of it, and he actually used it in his tournament run through the Phase 1 qualifiers for EU. Unfortunately, it didn't go that well for him, but another player by the name of Max actually used the same exact deck taken from Forsen, and with that deck, he qualified for Phase 2. I believe he told me that he went something around 17-4 with that deck, which is a really incredible record. So I think that definitely proves that even without Leroy, Miracle will still be a contender in the future.
Do you think people will be less mad at it then? Because right now, Kitkatz is going through the process of, oh my god, how do I deal with this? I don't have Brawl. He's just gonna draw more cards. He's just gonna burst me. But even if that's the case, do you feel like it's more of a fair fight? Like, sure, maybe Miracle gets down a peg or two, but is it that much more significant, or do you feel like it's still going to be just as potent, just maybe a little bit weaker?
I think the two reasons people get so mad at Miracle Rogue is first they see this Gadget Stand Auctioneer, and then this gadget it chains like 5 or 6 cards in a row, and your opponent's thinking, oh, that's not fair at all. And the second part is when the Leroy comes down and it deals like 30 damage to you in one turn, which I believe you saw in a tournament recently in one of your many casts. And again, your opponent's going to think, oh, that's not fair at all either. So one of those two things is going to go away, but you're still going to have half of the kind of frustration there.
And that frustration indeed, because more free spells, backstab comes down. There is a lot of potential for some good life gain with the Armor Smith, but Reynad doesn't have initiative whatsoever. It's very easy for the Miracle Rogue just to kind of slip in damage with the Gadget Stand, and this is all counting towards the fact that Reynad already has Leroy in hand and double Shadow Step. Now he has the opportunity to set up a 2-turn lethal, I believe, if he just kind of plans it out, make sure that his damage is accounted for, and just get out as much as he can so that way the next turn he can go for this 18 damage combo plus what he has.
Yeah, I think we've already kind of hit the point where it's kind of like the point of no return. Even though Kitkatz will be able to take this Auctioneer out on the next turn with his Execute, the card advantage is just too huge for Reynad at this point. Kitkatz has not really been drawing a lot of his cycle cards, which include Acolyte of Pain or Slam. So his hand size is looking fairly anemic right now. Even though he can deal with this Auctioneer, it's going to be very difficult to take care of the Sludge Belcher. And that Sludge Belcher is just going to keep racking in damage turn after turn until eventually Reynad will just be able to use a Leroy combo in order to finish Kitkatz off once and for all. Kitkatz, I really wish we could see his face right now. I mean, we can see part of it, but I kind of want to see his reactions. He must be in like severe pain right now.
Yeah, don't be fooled. It's not a frozen cam or Kitkatz with a monster staring ability. It's the fact that we couldn't get his webcam up today, so we're just using a picture. But I would assume it would probably show a little bit of signs of distress, considering that he doesn't have the best options. In fact, Sylvanas comes back in his hand off of a sap, but she has no application, and then Gromosh doesn't really affect anything other than killing the Sludge Belcher. So even then you're taking some damage back. Kitkatz is in a really tough spot here.
Yeah, tough spot indeed. It's compounded by the fact that Reynad already has his second sap in his hand, so no matter what minion Kitkatz decides to put on the board, it'll just go back to Kitkatz's hand once again. Kitkatz plays a 6-mana Sylvanas, and in turn, Reynad will play a 2-mana sap. So that's effectively a 4-mana tempo swing in Reynad's favor. And that will essentially equate to even more damage onto Kitkatz's face.
Well, he's got at least 24 damage right now. His opponent's at 29. And that's going to still be a little bit short, but the good news is he has other ways to stack the board. He's got Van Cleef, SI7. Reynad looks like he wants to draw more cards, but I feel like there's no more real cards to be drawn without overloading your hand because he was thinking about shiving to the face. I think just putting some of these minions out is your strongest play.
Mm. Yeah, you just want to develop the board. Kitkatz obviously is very low on answers right now. He's been using his Shield Slam, and I think it's Spellbreaker, a pretty good draw. He'll be able to silence the Edwin. But I kind of wanted to note that Kitkatz actually saved his execute for the last turn. So it seems like he values execute a bit more than he values the Shield Slam, and I think that's because he realized he was at 2 armor the last turn, and he could gain 2 more armor for a 6 damage Shield Slam, whereas Execute might be a little easier to activate in the future.
Yeah, he has Death Bite in hand compared to the fact that most likely he's going to have his armor shredded by Miracle Rogue repeatedly. So the most damage that can do is 2, while this Execute could scale infinitely, assuming this Van Cleef would go up really high. That said, Kitkat's still in a tough position because if you silence Van Cleef, you're still only gaining 4 health essentially when it attacks. And you've got bigger problems on your hands. Just the fact that there's the Sludge Belcher just in the way. An interesting inclusion into this Miracle Rogue. It seems like Sludge Belcher could fit anywhere nowadays.
Yeah, I actually did an interview with Reynad today, which will be going up soon on Liquid Hearth, and he was saying that Sludge Belcher is so good that I just want to put it in every single deck. And we've seen it kind of more and more being included. Actually, he silences the Sludge Belcher, and he goes for face. Wow. Kitkatz realizes that he has potential lethal on board if Reynad doesn't put up a taunt, or he can't kill him the next turn. And with the Grom plus the 4 damage from the Death Bite, he can. But unfortunately, Reynad does have the Leroy, and he can finish him off.
Yeah, he's got him covered way over. He's got double Shadow Step and Eviscerate, and even some other ways to squeeze in there with Blade Flurry. So it didn't seem like Kitkatz was able to stop him whatsoever, and Reynad's out to a 1-0 lead. And this is important because it is best of 3, but it is group stages. So winning these best of 3s, the first game is the most important. I saw a statistic somewhere with another best of 3 series where someone was doing evaluations, and the person who wins best of 3s are often like in the 70-80% favorite range to win the series. Just because it's so difficult, you can easily pick based off the rest of the field what deck you want, and you just have to win one more. So that if you get the early lead, you're in a prime position to win the the wheel wars of counters.
Yeah, exactly. And you want to keep in mind also that it's not only important to win the entire match, but it's also important to win as many games as possible. This is, of course, a round robins type of group stage, which means that if you win one more game against your opponent, then your overall game differential in the groups will be higher. So that means that if you kind of tie in matches with another player in your group, then you'll go ahead if you have won one more game. Now we see Kitkatz pick a counter, which is, I believe, a Tempo Priest based on the fact that there's a Loot Hoarder in Kitkatz's deck. What do you kind of think about this matchup, Tempo Priest specifically, versus Miracle Rogue?
Oh, I hate it. I played a lot of Priest in the past week and a half, Monk, and let me tell you, one of its worst matchups feels like Miracle Rogue because other than the Organized Circle combo, you are powerless a lot of times since cards like Holy Fire have been eliminated for stronger minion board control plays. So it's good that Kitkatz has it, but even so, there might be a case where Kitkatz might be baited to play something because a lot of times more so than answering the auctioneer, because that doesn't always come from the Miracle Rogue. You need something on board. So if Kitkatz has no other play, sometimes you can't afford to just pass because the board development means everything. And Miracle Rogue is one of the exceptional decks at taking that away from Priest.
Yeah, Kitkatz, unfortunately, he doesn't have a really strong opening turn 1. That's very important with Tempo Priest because it kind of wants to build up either an Undertaker or a Zombie Chow early on, and they just want to curve out really well and keep stacking damage on the board. And wow, a backstab instead of a dagger from Reynad. Could we be seeing a big Edwin this turn? Oh, actually, it's a 4/4 Edwin.
Right. It's big enough to the point where it harasses whatever comes out, and it's still very difficult for Priest to deal with because of 4 attack. Now this injured circle play is as strong as minion, but you're really hoping your opponent doesn't have sap or an easy way to eviscerate with deadly poison to remove it. But fortunately for Kitkatz, it doesn't look like Reynad has a direct answer at the moment other than sacrificing his minion in.
Yeah, Reynad got the 4/4 Dream Van Cleave against Priest, but it's probably the best situation that Kitkatz could have hoped for because he not only does he have two Circle of Healings, he has two creatures to combo the circles with. In addition to the fact that Reynad doesn't have a sap in his hand, even if this 4/7 were sap to the field, then Kitkatz could just as well easily respond with a Circle plus Akanine the next turn, and that's gotta hurt Reynad. He he clears the 4/7, but at the cost of his minion on the board, and at the cost of 4 damage to his face, plus a poison dagger charge.
Right. It definitely hurts, but it can easily pick up if Reynad picks up a preparation or conceal over the next couple of draws because he does have the auctioneer in hand. He's got two auctioneers in hand as well. So that allows him to kind of use the first one and have that ability to back up in case Priest has the best answer for it, which sitting in Kitkat's hands he does.
Yeah. Wow. A Karen goes in the field, and again, Kitkatz knows that Reynad probably does not have a sap in his hand by the fact that he didn't sap the 4/7 that was on the board previously. Fortunately, Reynad has a decent play in Auctioneer, um, or he could choose to use the Thanos. He was kind of hovering over that Thanos a bit, but that doesn't really do much to affect the board state. And I feel like the Auctioneer, since you have two, you can kind of afford to give that up, but it is the Thanos that goes on the board. And he choose to shiv the Thanos? Wow.
Ah, deny the Cabal Shadow Priest. This is a very nice foresight because look what it's in Kitkat's hands. He does have that Cabal Shadow Priest. So immediately goes for the double draw in order to try and get as much card draw as possible in preparation. And you know what? It's taking advantage of the fact that this form of Miracle is a little bit lighter on the draws. He does have double Belcher, which makes me believe that he doesn't have any Azure Drake in his deck because you still have to have cards like the Gadget Stand Auctioneer and most likely Lotheb, and anything else is just jumboing your deck far too much on the 5 mana slot.
Mm-hmm. Now, Kitkatz, he's doesn't have he has the Karen on board, which is very important, but he has to be thinking what could make my opponent do that kind of play. And also, he's more tempted to use the Cabal Shadow Priest right now because typically in Miracle Rogue, there's only two targets: either the Thalnos, which Reynad has already denied, or a possible 2/4 Gnomish Inventor, which we don't even know, or Kitkatz doesn't even know if that's in Reynad's deck. So it's even a chance that this Cabal could be used something other than a 4/5.
Well, Reynad with a pair of pretty poor draws, honestly. The Shadow Steps don't help him in the slightest at the moment. And he wanted more spells to go with the Gadget Stand Auctioneer, but he did use some of his best draw mechanics with the Gadget Stand Auctioneer. Shiv and Fan of Knives, along with some other cards like Backstab would have been easy to cycle through. So he's in a slightly awkward spot, even though it looked nice that he had both Auctioneers, and he might just toss out one of these 5 cost minions and just kind of leave it out there, whether it's to draw with the Auctioneer or the Sludge Belt to defend for himself.
Yeah, that Thalnos into Shiv play was basically Reynad thinking, if both the cards that I used on my previous turn, they're both cantrips and they both draw another card. So hopefully I can get two more spells from that, plus a third spell that I'll draw on the turn that Reynad is on right now. Unfortunately, Reynad got two Shadow Steps. They're spells, but not really the spells you want.
Wow, interesting creative play here from Reynad. He's trying to anticipate the Sludge Belcher first body being taken out of some kind. And by doing so, there's only going to be a 1/2 slime to potentially challenge this 4/1 body from Karen that's been weakened. It could also backfire depending on what Priest has, which is this ability to double heal his creatures.
Yeah, it was definitely a very creative play from Reynad. He's thinking, in this matchup, my health really doesn't matter that much. Either the priest will snowball on his board, and I'll lose eventually, or I'll just draw too much and priest can't deal with it. And in either circumstance, the rogue's health isn't really that important. Reynad has 8 mana right now, and he decides I have to go for the deadly poison, and he draws a preparation. That was a pretty huge draw.
But he got nothing off of it. There's preparation into nothing, and you have a second Auctioneer, so it feels like shadow stepping your Auctioneer. is solely just to cycle and lose 6 damage ability to burst against the priest deck, you're also staring at a board that will most likely trade into it and not lose anything because of the priest hero power. So Reynad's in a tough spot. It could pick up a lot if all he has to do is draw Leroy, but as of now, he only has his Farseer and Sludge Belchers, and those are dead ends.
Yeah, as Kitkatz right now, I guess Reynad passed. As Kitkatz right now, you have to be thinking what could possibly be in Reynad's hand right now for him not to draw like 5 or 6 cards from this auctioneer. And the cards that come to mind are cards like Leroy, Shadow Step, and Shadow Step. So I think Kitkatz at this stage of the game, he should be playing a bit more defensively, trying to keep his life total up a bit. Um, and he chooses to heal the Karen actually. I guess he at 25 HP, you're not really thinking of something like the Leroy combo plus a preparation plus an eviscerate, especially because Reynad already had a gadget last turn and he did not use preparation on that turn.
Oh yes, definitely. And you don't prep into pass. There just doesn't exist when the gadget stands on the board. You know your opponent hit minions and or situational cards that he doesn't feel like using. Now Reynad still, oh, he has second preparation with his gadget stand, and he's got 9 mana. So there is room for him to kind of get out here, but just the preparation alone doesn't guarantee anything here, Monk.
Yeah, but I feel like if you kind of make a more defensive play, like if you play just the Sludge Belcher into the Earthen Ring Farseer, I think you're gonna get snowballed to death. Reynad does go for that line of play. He's really hoping for a second spell, and he's hoping that this won't be too bad for him. After all, the Sludge Belcher is a 5 health minion creature. It's incredibly difficult to deal with all the 4 attack creatures on Kitkatz's board right now. So. It'll be maybe Reynad will be thinking, oh, I can possibly maybe only take 4 health of damage at best this next turn. Maybe the board won't get too stacked.
And that's pretty optimistic considering your opponent could have stuff like Shadow Madness and completely take over your Sludge Belcher and its Death Rattle effect, which you've been seeing as a common include as many Priest players, including, Brian Kibler and a lot of people who've taken Expiration like Zed a lot, have really included in part of their arsenal here. Now, Kitkatz picked up his own Sludge Belcher, one of the best defenses against Leroy, and it seems like he can just push a little bit. His opponent isn't sitting at the highest life total, and it's like you said, the board is starting to snowball here.
Yeah, Kitkatz will be able to get really nice value out of the Circle of Healing. He'll be healing 4 of his creatures for a total of, I believe, 4 plus 4 plus 4, 13 points of damage. Plus 13 health for a 0 mana card. Not bad at all, I would say.
That
Oh, and
sounds pretty good.
Conceal.
It's Conceal. You need a little bit more, though, because look at what's on the board. You might need to draw Sap on something, most likely the Cairn, because you're looking at 17 damage on the board at the moment, and just like a simple Holy Nova or Aconite Hero Power could kill you. Reynad
Yeah.
introduced with a Phantom Knives off his preparation, so that gives him the ability to draw 2 more, but he's trying to plan out his mana. I feel like Phantom Knives, though, is the better choice by far. Just want to get the 2 cards to see what you can get.
You could kind of see Reynad's eyebrows kind of flare up once he drew the Conceal because it's like, oh, I finally drew the Conceal, nice, but at the same time, oh, now I finally get the Conceal after this many turns. Really? Is this what you're giving me right now?
Better late than never, honestly.
Yeah. Reynad decided to use the Fan because it was, after all, a 3 mana card, and it allows him to use 2 mana cards more. So he'll actually be able to clear some of the board right now. Fairly impressive.
Yeah, and leave his opponent with just 2 of 4 attack minions, unless he draws something else to help him clear once more. But with 0 mana left, job by the auctioneer has been done, and that was the exact thing that Kitkatz did not want to see. And interestingly enough, because Kitkat gave up his Circle of Healing, he did manage to secure his board. Otherwise, everything would have died to just the Phantom Knives alone. But at the same time, because he drew Zombie Chow, that was the extra 7 damage needed to end the game.
Yeah. Reynad actually knows that his auctioneer will be pretty safe right now, unless Kitkatz has something like Sylvanas plus Death. We've already seen Kitkatz use two of his circles, and and Kitkatz might even be regretting using his second circle last turn, even though he got 13 points worth of damage from it. Is Kitkatz just gonna heal and possibly pass right now? It seems awfully strange.
Wow, I
It's,
don't know. I feel like the board presence matters that much more. Doesn't Akanai give it like another tempting ability for your opponent to play removal?
yeah, and not only that, Ysera might have been a decent card as well. Perhaps Ysera Awakens might be exactly what you need to kill Reynad next turn.
Yeah.
But I guess he values the healing a lot, and he values the board presence of the 3/5 rather than a 4/12. We haven't seen many saps from Reynad, and actually Reynad just drew his first sap, so I believe that was a pretty good call from Kitkatz.
Wow. Reynad going for a eviscerate to the face, and if he draws Leroy, then I believe just with the 8 mana alone, that allows him to give lethal because that's 18 plus the 4 plus 22. So he's not playing for the removal game, he's playing for the throw based off how many cards are left. And he doesn't get Leroy, he gets Lotheb instead.
Hmm. Now that you haven't drawn Leroy with that backstab, Reynad's plan has to change. There's just a
Yep.
lot of damage on the board right now. There is 11 exactly, actually, plus the 2 hero power
Right.
from the priest with the Akanai. So Reynad saps the Bane, and I believe he can actually can
Yeah.
he clear the rest of the field?
Yep. Just attack. You can just use your auctioneer to attack and clear. The Akanai is a higher priority for sure.
Yeah, that's fair.
Do you want the extra card with Shiv? Or do you want to put out an SI7 agent? I mean, I think the SI7 agent kind of compensates for the lack of damage with the eviscerate. So, I think I was going to call him RDU. He would have been so offended. Right now, is going to be in a really good position if he draws Leroy, and he still has another outer with Shiv, so that way he can go for the full combo.
Oh wow, that's pretty desperate. Healing your opponent's auctioneer.
Uh, uh-oh.
Kitkat's uh-oh, he's gonna well play, not even gonna play this out because he knows Reynad just has too much damage and Kitkatz
So close yet
can't
so
deal with
far,
any of it.
Monk. Rogue
Yet
got down
again.
to 11 health, and he had a board that was